Welcome to Eternal Dread, where fear never sleeps. Tell us where you're watching from, and what time it is, because terror has no limits. If you're brave enough, share and comment, but beware, something might be watching you too. Now, turn off the lights, and let the dread begin. My name's Jose, and I, 49M, have been married to Kelly, 42F, for 6 years. We met at Mexico City International Airport in 2014. Both of us were waiting in a restaurant for a late-night long haul to London. The pretty stranger quickly clocked my black epaulets, each bearing 4 yellow stripes, then swiveled in her bar stool to smile at me. It was an unconvincing smile. I remember that. She looked like she'd been crying, and I also remember her asking, "Are you flying somewhere far, far away?" When I answered, Kelly smiled and revealed that she would be one of my passengers. I don't remember much of my response, truth be told, but I quipped about her being in safe hands because I'd just read Flying for Dummies. And she laughed politely, as if it were the first time she'd heard that joke. In all honesty, as scummy as it seems, I wanted to impress her. She captivated me. I still remember every last thing she said, even after all of these years. Oddly, however, I only have fuzzy memories of my own words. My mother used to tease that Kelly had put a spell on me. Anyway, without being prompted, the sullen woman told me her story. That she'd booked an early flight home in the middle of her honeymoon because her husband, Michael, wasn't the person he'd purported to be. He was an abuser, a liar, and he's making me tell lies too, she said. He emptied me. That bizarre and unsettling choice of words would ring in my head for the next decade. And only yesterday, after finding and watching that cursed tape, did I finally understand what Kelly meant. I think 10 years ago, she might have been warning me to stay away from her. I think that had been a glimpse of the real Kelly. But I'm not making sense. Let me explain. Everything could have ended with that conversation. We could have parted ways. I wish we had, but I was compelled to see Kelly again. I know that's awful. It's not a habit of mine, falling for a married woman. I just felt something indescribable. Something I now realize may not have been butterflies at all. I had a week in London before the return flight to Mexico. During those 7 wonderful days, I frequently met up with Kelly at her hotel, said that I had to check on her. She was too frightened to return to her hometown in Cambridge, as she believed that Michael would be waiting for her, and she ignored my pleas to report everything to the police, which, I'll admit, seemed strange even at the time. We quickly formed a bond, and things didn't end when I returned to Mexico. I visited Kelly every time I flew to England. After she moved to Brighton, a month later, I started taking the train to her new apartment. Believe it or not, I once took a short-haul flight from Paris to London just to see her. A year later, when our relationship inevitably became something more, I'd already made the decision. I wanted to move to England to be with her. I'd been training to become an airport technician, and I secured a job at Heathrow in late 2015. By early 2017, Kelly and I had bought a house together. In 2018, we got married. I'm obviously fast-forwarding through the ins and outs of our relationship, but Reddit isn't built for essays, is it? I'm here to tell you what I found yesterday morning, whilst tidying a storage cupboard. Kelly's clusterfuck of clutter, as I like to call it, came tumbling out of the open door and washed over my feet. A stark reminder that weekends shouldn't be wasted on chores. If I'd been relaxing on the sofa, I might not have discovered what I discovered. Maybe Kelly would have disposed of her own clutter, and we would have lived a happy 50 years together. But I was the one wading through the puddle of forgotten belongings. And what caught my eye during the tumble was a camcorder, surfing atop the junk heap, which spilled out of its bag, landed at my feet. I picked it up and chuckled. I knew Kelly and I were old, but not that old. I had no idea she owned such a relic, and curiosity got the better of me, obviously. Who wouldn't want to check the contents of a spouse's dusty tape locked away for who knows how many decades? When I plugged in the device to charge it, an error message displayed on the ancient screen. I thought I'd been thwarted by tape or hardware degradation, but I fixed everything, unfortunately, by cleaning out filth from the tape slot. Then I rewound the recording and pressed the play icon. The white, pixelated text read, October 9th, 2014. For Americans, that's September 10th, 2014. And I quickly realized that was a week before I first met my wife. Everything slotted together horribly when Kelly stepped out of a hotel bathroom in wedding lingerie. I realized what kind of tape I'd found. Don't think less of me for watching. It wasn't like that. Even degenerates, I assume, don't want to watch the person they love share such intimacy with someone else, let alone an abusive ex-husband. And Michael was abusive. Kelly wasn't lying about that, but she'd only ever told me fragments of the story. So, even though I expected a raunchy sex tape, I wasn't watching for that reason. My eyeballs weren't springing from their cartoon sockets. Well, okay, I was watching the video keenly, but fear rendered me wide-eyed. Not lust. I just knew that something was wrong with the hotel room. The only natural thing in the footage was Kelly. And as I watched my wife sprawl across the bedsheets, waiting for her filming husband to join her, I eyed the room's cream-colored walls. I didn't give a rat's rear about the interior design, but something hidden in the paint made me sick. You wouldn't understand unless you'd seen the video for yourself. Then something in my head started to ache sharply, much like a migraine brewing behind my sockets. But it wasn't that. It was a painful urge which prompted each of my squeaking eyes to twist. I looked, without even wanting to look, at the edge of the screen, searched for something that was only just beyond both the border of the video and Kelly's vision. I wanted to scream at the younger version of my wife as she lay still, as she watched Michael with caving dimples and a provocative grin. I wanted to scream at her to run, though I didn't know why I wanted to do so. That was the most terrifying thing of all. I didn't fear the obvious horror of watching my wife and her ex make love. I feared something else in the room, something I didn't understand. "Get rid of that camera," Kelly whispered, before wagging her index in a come-hither motion. Michael's heavy breathing was not the breathing of a lustful man. It was the labored breathing of something hungry. Hungry in a way that neither food nor sex could satiate. "We need to preserve this moment," Michael said. Kelly rolled her eyes. "Is that right?" In response, the man stopped breathing, and my wife's face changed. Her sultry smile morphed into not a frown, but downturned lips. Lips hanging open in the same horrified expression that I must have been wearing whilst watching the tape. Michael hacked, as if bringing up a hairball, then promised, "I'll put it down." He placed the device on the dressing table and walked over to the bed, but Kelly did not thank him. She whimpered and recoiled, not due to Michael leaving the camera recording. I don't even think she'd noticed its red, blinking light. No, my wife was still frightened because she sensed a presence. Not her husband, not the room's seedy atmosphere, not even the claustrophobic nature of the walls. She sensed the same thing that I sensed, though neither of us knew exactly what we sensed. "I'm not in the mood anymore," Kelly whimpered as Michael climbed onto the bed. He hushed her, stroking the backs of his twitching fingers against her trembling cheek. "Don't be like that, darling. It's time to consummate." Then Michael gasped like a punctured tire and shot his head towards the empty corner of the room. He nodded slowly, but neither I nor the recorded version of Kelly saw what he saw. "If I must," he told the empty air. Then came something I still don't know how to explain. The plaster rippled as something behind the wall pressed against it. Tried to get out, like a hand forming a shadow puppet. Something about the shape was illusory. It could have been a man, could have been a monster. Its outline rapidly changed from a tall thing with arms and legs to a misshapen blob of indiscernible segments. After less than a second or two of the wall bulging, its plaster flattened again, and the living shape was gone. Kelly screamed in synchronicity with me, but she hadn't even noticed the anomaly. She was staring unblinkingly into her husband's eyes. "What's wrong with your face, Michael?" she cried. What terrified me was that, even when the camera caught his face, I didn't see any supernatural change in Kelly's former husband. Didn't see anything other than a very human man. One with an unkind smile and dead eyes, perhaps, but still a man. However, Kelly saw something. Something I didn't. Still, all of that pales in comparison to what happened next. Michael thrust his hand into Kelly's open mouth, prompting her eyes to open just as widely. Her husband's whole forearm plunged into her jaws, muffling her series of screams. Then my wife wriggled and squirmed as Michael propelled his upper arm down her throat, pushed deeper and deeper until his shoulder met her lips. Another impossibility followed, one that I still don't know how to put into words. Michael pulled his arm out of Kelly's mouth, and when his fingers resurfaced, they were holding something. Not my wife's innards, not the innards I had expected, at least. There wasn't a speck of blood on the man's hand, but a wet, translucent film. It looked a little like either saliva or lubricant. But again, that wasn't what horrified me. Michael's fingers were clutching the hair of a human head. A head sitting at the top of Kelly's throat, like some wretched birthing canal. My wife's lips opened unimaginably wide, as did mine. I gawped in incomprehensible horror. She gawped simply to make room for that adult head to emerge. then gawped wider to free a set of shoulders and a torso. I uttered an entirely silent scream, believing that, if I were to produce even the tiniest sound, something from within that footage would hear me in the future. But a slight whimper escaped once I'd identified the head. It was Kelly. A clone version of Kelly was climbing out of her lips. Some fleshy Russian doll. That younger version of my wife was birthing an exact replica of herself. And the clone was screaming too, for it didn't ask to be born. The original Kelly's skin started to crinkle, crease, and shrivel into something smaller. The clone undressed, shed her former skin, reduced the original Kelly to a silky dress that dropped onto the duvet. Then the clone, the new Kelly, fell into Michael's arms, and she eyed the empty skin suit beside her. She may have been screaming through those open lips, but a white sound was drowning all other noises. A prickly static that dug into my flesh. That maddening racket was accompanied by a gangly shadow moving across the wall of the hotel room's entryway. A shadow with the vague appearance of a man. But the tape cut out before the stranger came into view. Hard on my tongue, I hurriedly thrust the camera back into the bag and tossed it against the back wall of the cupboard. And mere moments later, there came the sound of my wife's car pulling into the driveway, so I tried to compose myself. Tried to forget the hellishness I had just seen on her old wedding tape. I looked out of the window at the driveway, but she wasn't in her car. And when I turned back to the kitchen doorway, I screamed. There Kelly stood, hounding me with blank eyes and tight lips, with a face horribly white, yet no whiter than usual. I realized I was simply seeing her true self. It had only taken me 10 years to open my eyes. How did you come indoors so quietly? I tried to ask, though nothing but a series of hoarse whispers sounded. Jose, Kelly began, before lifting the camera bag she'd inexplicably acquired. We were meant to be decluttering, darling. Why would you want to hold on to this? I tried to answer, but I was startled by my wife's sudden step towards me. A solitary step, followed by a gasp and a jolt, much like her ex-husband in the video. Then Kelly looked towards an unoccupied corner of the kitchen and said, "If I must." Upon hearing that echo of Michael's haunting words, I ran, barged past my wife, who seemed either unprepared or unbothered by my escape. I ran out of the house, leapt into my car, and drove away from my life. I've been on the road for more than a day, stealing bursts of sleep in service station car parks. It's currently 2 in the morning, and I was just woken by the sound of white noise. Not from a playing videotape, but from the world around me. That static drowned everything for one horrendous minute. I didn't want to look out of my driver's window, but there also came that familiar strain behind my eyes, a coded warning from my brain. And when I sat up to look outside, I locked eyes with a large truck parked a couple of spaces to my right. That was when I yelled until my vocal cords gave out. The side of the vehicle rippled in much the same way as the wall of the hotel room. Rippled to form the outline of a man inside the storage compartment. He was pressing against the truck's side, trying to push through the metal. The shape quickly lost its definition, then it became nothing at all. All that remained was an abandoned truck in a near-deserted car park. I don't know what to do. Please help me before that thing finds me. Before it pulls something out of me. If you met me on the street and asked me what my job was, I would tell you that I work from home consulting for an industrial laundry company. That is, after all, the cover story I have been provided with. The reality? My job is even simpler. Every Friday night, I dress up nice, report to a certain theater downtown, have a seat, and watch a performance. That's it. All it takes is a couple hours out of my week, and I end up making 6 figures a year with every benefit you could possibly ask for. I know. It sounds too good to be true. Pretty much anybody on the planet would kill to have a job like mine. At least, perhaps, until they find out just what kind of performances I'm made to attend. Before I start, though, I need you to keep in mind that I'm a good person. I donate thousands to the Rainforest Fund out of every paycheck, and me and my kids volunteer at the food bank weekly. I'm a devout believer, and I'm going to heaven when I die. After all, I myself have never hurt anybody, never raised a hand to injure any living soul. How could you possibly call me a sinner, when all I ever do is watch? It started about 3 years ago, when their job offer found me when I was at my most desperate. All I was told was, every Friday night, I would attend a performance at my city's fanciest theater. That was it. I was baffled at first. What the hell do I know about theater, or ballet, or orchestras? Had they gotten me mixed up with some big-shot critic? During our talk on the phone, however, They politely reassured me that no critical ability would be required. "All we ask," they said, "is for you to be there to bear witness." Everything about it screamed scam, but I figured, what the hell? Worst case scenario, I listen to a pitch for some MLM or timeshare, politely decline, and then walk out with some pocket money. I was baffled when I pulled up to the theater. Dozens, maybe even hundreds of people were streaming in, all in nice suits and gorgeous gowns. I'd thrown on the fanciest clothes I could afford, yet I still felt severely underdressed. The theater was totally rented out by my employer, and only my fellow co-workers were allowed in. How much could it have cost to hire such a massive crowd just to attend this one performance? Who could possibly bankroll something like this? I tried to empty my mind and simply merge into that human tidal wave flowing through the doors. Every staff member was dressed in a refined all-black suit, with black tie and undershirt, to the point they seemed to darken the air around them. Each wore a white comedy mask, the neoprene stretched into a grin of perpetual laughter, which struck me as almost mocking. They demanded that we hand over all electronic devices, even patting us down and running a metal detector over us. Then they reminded all attending not to leave their seats under any circumstances during the performance, recommending we take bathroom breaks before the show started, and to remain quiet and to keep our eyes open. They kept repeating the same mantra. No distractions, no diversions, no lapses in concentration. Remember, you are here to bear witness. If I'd been alone, I would have left right then and there. There was a tickling in the back of my brain, some primate part of me screaming that there was something terribly wrong here. But mob mentality is a hell of a thing. Everybody else seemed calm, nonplussed, handed their phones over without a fuss. There were a few holdouts, probably other newbies like me, but eventually they too relented. If everyone else is going along with it, I figured, why shouldn't I? Who wants to be the one, single paranoid bastard who missed out on an easy paycheck? Stepping into a gorgeous theater like something out of 3 centuries ago, I was most struck by the make of the stage. It looked like the back action of a piano, strange levers and mahogany hammers looking like fingers manipulating countless lines of piano wire, some over a dozen feet long. All the taut wires stretched in bizarre formations across the stage reminded me, somehow, of a spider's web. I could not fathom a machine so complex, yet with such little apparent purpose. The nature of the performance always varies. Sometimes it's a work of Shakespeare, a ballet, an opera, hell, even a puppet show. That day, it was a concert featuring a small chamber orchestra of around 35. Students, it looked like, young and inexperienced, with a nervous air about them, as if this was their first time performing before such a crowd. Mostly a string section, plus one of each woodwind, and just a couple each on horns and percussion. The conductor was one of the staff members in the comedy masks. I was baffled. Who would put forward this much cash just for a small, green orchestra to play in such a massive, prestigious venue? One of them must be a billionaire's kid, I figured. It was the only explanation. This, I've since realized, is always the best part. The beginning of the performance, when you can, if you try, lose yourself in the display and pretend everything is okay, that it's all normal. It was best on those lucky days when the performers on stage were completely unaware of just what sort of danger they were in. That always makes it easier for everybody. On that first day, I was as oblivious as they were, and simply enjoyed the music. Maybe some snob of the orchestral arts would hear their amateurish mistakes, but to my untrained ear, they sounded just fine. Pleasant, even. But one question began to worm its way into my head, a small nagging at first which crescendoed into a hammering on the inside of my skull. How much time has passed? At a certain point, I suspected the intermission was long overdue. But there were no windows, and I had to part with my electronic wristwatch at the door, so really, getting any sense of time was impossible. I dismissed it as my lousy attention span at first. But eventually, others began taking notice. No one dared speak, but among the fellow newbies, I noticed furrowed brows and sideways glances, confused and concerned. The performers seemed to be getting restless as well, whispering and gesturing to each other and the conductor, who never ceased those robotic, sweeping motions of his gloved hands. It must have been 2 hours by then, if I had to guess, and they were starting to look exhausted, dehydrated. Some even looked as if they were about to quit playing, continue performing. In a moment, all of the piano wire loudly reverberated and stretched taut with the movements of those mechanical contraptions on stage, as the whole thing bristled and tensed as though it were a living thing. And that voice, cracking like thunder, seemed to emerge from the stage itself with a mechanical roar like the grinding of metal on metal that seemed to frighten them into submission for a while. It wasn't until a half hour later that my life changed irreparably. They'd been playing a quiet sonata, so everybody could hear the sudden FRR ting, accompanied by a pained yelp. My eyes leapt to one of the violinists. One of her strings had broken and happened to snap her right in the eye. It could see the streak of scarlet bifurcate her pupil, before the emerging blood replaced the entire eye with a thick redness. She stood, clutching a hand over her eye and blindly grasping with the other, gesturing toward medical help. And as she did so, that strange lattice of levers and hammers and pulleys all roared and clacked to life, like a bear trap being sprung. The machine's efficacy was just as sudden, just as brutal. Those clockwork edifices moved like a pair of robotic arms, aiming a wire for her neck as if trying to garrote her. But they moved at such a speed that the wire seemed to pass through her, like she wasn't even there. For a moment she seemed fine, unaffected, as if nothing had happened at all. And then, things began to fall off of her. Her head, severed at the neck, alongside the hand she'd been holding over her eye, and the very fingertips of her other hand with which she'd been grasping a little too high. All had been cut cleanly, with surgical precision. Time seemed to slow as they all went clattering wetly to the floor, and the girl's body soon followed, as if it took a few moments for gravity to set in, or perhaps for her body to realize she was dead. It happened so fast, it was hard to be properly horrified. It was more like, oh maybe. Everybody stared at the chunks of meat that had once been a promising young woman with hopes and dreams. That spider web of wires was still rumbling and shaking all around them, and the mechanical voice roared once more. Continue performing. They were given no further warnings. A few of them jumped from their seats out of sheer instinct, not even thinking. None of them made it more than a step before the wires divided them in twain. The rest just kept playing exactly as they had been, as if their brain froze up at what they'd witnessed and simply ran on autopilot, until their faculties slowly returned to them and they realized that this instinct had saved their lives. Where once beauty filled the room, now the orchestra had been reduced to a discordant sound like a long, shuddering whine, like a mocking parody of music. They gripped their instruments with trembling, sweaty hands, playing just well enough to avoid stoking the ire of those quivering wires stretched taut all around them. They realized gradually that they were allowed to speak. Immediately they began wailing hard enough almost to mercifully drown out that dismal cacophony that was once music, some begging and pleading with the staff, others screaming out threats, be they legal or physical. Nothing they said could shake the masked men and women in the slightest. They stood at order like statues, unflinching. Realizing this, they turned their attention to us. A wall of red, weepy eyes scanning the crowd for any hint of mercy, begging us to band together against the staff, calling us all sick bastards for just sitting there and watching them die. A blonde woman on violin had the most genius and cruel strategy of all. She merely began telling us about herself. Everything she could think of, poured out in between sniffles and tears. My name is Vera H. Hayes. That's my husband over there. She gestured to a dark-haired man on drums. He'd been the quietest of them all, seeming to be saving his strength. We have a little girl. She's 8 years old, and she loves her mama and papa. Her name is Lucy. She loves horsies, and I was saving us to maybe give her riding lessons one day. I desperately wanted to cover my ears, but knew it would be against the rules. Why can't she just shut the hell up? I thought bitterly, grinding my teeth. I truly hated her. Hated her more than I'd ever hated before. But why? Some dim remnant of my reason asked. She's a victim here. She's done you no wrong. But I realized I hated her because she kept reminding me she was human. Reminded me of what I was doing to her. What we all were doing to her, sitting here in complicity. And it almost worked, too. I almost resolved to save her. But then came the boom of a gunshot from far behind me. The shot had come from one of the tragedians standing amid the upper gallery, I was certain. I almost made the mistake of looking back. Instead, I kept my eyes locked forward, and merely imagined who it was that just had their brains splattered across their seat. Had they snuck a phone in and tried calling 911? Had they tried making a break for it? Or maybe they just couldn't take it anymore, and made the fatal decision to look away from the horror. I tried to distract myself by studying the impossible mechanism animating the blood-soaked piano wire. I couldn't figure it out. It was an impossible machine, existing in defiance all basic laws of geometry, and seemed to have no means of controlling it, instead operating automatically with some malign intelligence. Perhaps it was an extension of whatever creature composed the stage itself. It was a living thing, of that much I was certain. It breathed beneath the performers, and their blood soaked into its floorboards in moments, as if consumed. After some hours, the orchestra had gone quiet, having screamed themselves hoarse. I couldn't imagine being in their shoes. Even just watching them perform was a test of endurance. Many of them were oozing blood all over their instruments, from scarlet cuts where the skin had split. The woman on the French horn was struggling hardest of all, her lungs and hands burning with exhaustion. "I can't," she eventually cried out in a hoarse little wheeze, horn slamming to the floor as her body gave out. "I'm so sorry, I can't do any." A wire passed through flesh in an instant, and suddenly she had no mouth to speak, no eyes to see, no mind to think with. All of it lay splattered upon the stage, which sated itself upon that spilled vitae. Another gunshot. I quivered in my seat, sweat beading on my forehead from the terror. Somebody in the audience had looked away, and I realized I had just been about to do the same thing, had the sudden sound not knocked me out of my stupor. Most of the performers went in similar ways, over the next few hours, either making mistakes or their bodies giving out. As monstrous as it may sound, I was quietly praying for them to get it over with. They were dead the moment that they walked on stage. Why drag it out for all these hours, just for the inevitable to happen anyway? I recognize now that it's almost impossible to make that choice, to simply give in and accept death in defiance of all our natural instincts. But the auditorium now reeked from audience members voiding their bowels, and the damn woman next to me just wouldn't stop crying, wouldn't stop at all. Vera and her husband lasted the longest of all, perhaps because they had each other. Over a dozen hours had passed, maybe even 2, and they were still playing a little duet in perfect sync, despite everything. By now, they were simply talking to each other as if nothing was wrong, as if we weren't even watched. "Baby, when we get out of here, I'm going to take you to Martha's Vineyard. I know I've been saying that for so long, but God, I wasted so much money on that stupid fucking motorcycle," he said. "Lucy's going to love it." Vera chuckled. "I don't know. It might be boring for a little girl. Isn't it all a bunch of old people up there?" He laughed weakly. "Oh, maybe in town. But you know her. Once you get her in the water, you can't get her back out. She's a natural-born swimmer, I swear. Think we'll see her in the Olympics someday?" Haha. It was surreal to watch, like I was peeking in on a private conversation a couple was having in their own home. But I could tell both of them were trying to maintain some illusion of normalcy, anything to keep themselves psychologically intact as the hours pass. Even as they tried to smile and laugh, there was a quiver in their tone, a desperation, a fear of what might happen if there was a single break in the conversation. A lot of what they said was too personal to relay here. They went into old regrets, past mistakes, resolved every argument they ever had in all their years together. It was like they wanted to make sure they said everything they had to say before the end came. I think I owe them at least their privacy. But the husband was slowly deteriorating. He'd moved too quick, caught the cymbal with his hand, leaving a wide gash along his palm that was gushing blood at a terrifying rate. Now he was getting woozier and woozier, swaying dizzily, his eyes unfocusing, his speech becoming slurred and his playing sloppy. Vera desperately tried to keep him focused. "Talk to me, baby. Think of the beach. Lucy's going to love the seashells. She'll pick her favorite and put it on that little stand in her room, with all her little trophies." She rambled on, but by the end, all he could manage was half-hearted grunts of affirmation. He was leaning in his seat, and then his drumstick went flying right out of his hand, sending a cloud of pink mist through the air along its path. And yet he kept going through the motions of playing, as if he didn't even notice. Then a sudden clarity formed in his eyes, and he stared at his empty hand in disbelief. And then the piano wire was tensing and strumming all around him, and then in an instant he was up from his seat and racing towards us. He knew it was over. He just wanted to strike out at the world if he could, one last act of defiance. He even locked eyes with me, and I'll never forget the look on his face. "Why are you watching this? You sick bastards. You sick, twisted." He threw his remaining drumstick, and the trajectory would have delivered it right to me. But the piano wires lacerated it in midair, slicing into it from 100 different directions until it disappeared into a cloud of sawdust. And then, they did the same to him. Vera didn't scream or sob. She just tensed and let out the tiniest little gasp, like when you're at the doctor's and know the shot is inevitable, but it still stings anyway. And then she was all alone. She looked at us like she wanted to speak, wanted to say something, to express what was happening inside her. But what was there left to say? She'd spent almost a full day screaming herself hoarse with every combination of words she could think of. None of it helped. None of it meant anything. Instead, she expressed herself through music. She began to play the most mournful, sobering solo I had ever heard, one I knew she making up as she went along, one with which she communicated those parts of herself that words could not encompass. She stared us all down, eyes red and bloodshot, making eye contact individually, as if to remind us that we were not a shapeless mass, that we were all individually responsible. I only barely remember the sound of it now, as if I'd heard it in a dream, and yet even now the memory tears at my heart. She performed for what felt like an eternity. And then in the end, she slowly, calmly set down her violin, stood up, and took a bow. And then, she was unmade. Everyone stood up around me all of a sudden, and I was immediately caught up in it too, performing a standing ovation that dragged on and on. We screamed, shouted, cried, threw things, smashed our fists against seats, tore at our hair, laughed, and danced with each other. It was the ultimate catharsis after all that silence, after a full day of holding it all in. Never before had I felt so connected to a crowd of people on some deep, spiritual level. We marched out of the theater, stumbling like a procession of ghouls with blank faces and tired eyes. The staff were as polite as ever, thanking us for attending the performance and hoping that we enjoyed the show. Some were dragging the bodies of shot audience members out of the theater. As I finally emerged into the outside world, I was stunned to find it was still the same night I had entered. At least 20 hours had passed inside that theater, I was sure of it, but for the outside world, only 2 hours had passed. Exactly the duration listed on their job offer. I'd never been explicitly told not to reveal what I'd seen there, and now I knew why. Nobody believed me, or worse, maybe they were covering it up. I swear to God, the police dispatcher laughed at me over the phone. I swore I'd never go back. I'd been part of something evil, something unfathomable, and it would haunt me forever. But the next year was one of constant desperation, debt climbing as job opportunities declined at equal rates. I held out for about a year, but eventually I gave in. And to my horror, the next performance was easier, now that I knew what to expect. And then the next was easier still, and the next. The performance is always different, but the end result is always the same. I have to remind myself that I'm not culpable for what they're doing there. All I do is watch. We watch people die every day, in the news and online. People suffering horrible fates, often in places our own countries, help to destabilize. How are my actions any different, really? We all have to accept that terrible things happen in this world, and all we can do about them is either look away, or look the horror right in the eye. Is choosing to look away more moral, or is it only more cowardly? And besides, wouldn't it be worse for them if there wasn't an audience? If they had to die there in the dark, alone, no one seeing, no one caring, no one remembering. After all, someone has to bear witness. Okay guys, before I begin, I gotta give you a fair warning. This story is absolutely true, unfortunately. It is also very long. It goes back to my childhood, but it wasn't as terrifying until very recently. Now I am completely lost in fear. I am an adult man, logical and intelligent, or I'd like to believe so, sitting in my bed, scared shitless right now, goosebumps all over my body and tears of horror in my eyes. I ask for your help in explaining this fucking horrifying thing. Caution, you'll notice that I curse quite a bit. I want you to know that what you read from now on is the situation perceived by my mind. I like to think that I am a very rational person, and I haven't been able to explain these occurrences in any natural way. Since my mom got a new job, she started making new friends. It is common in our country that friends come to each other's houses for a cup of coffee, cake, gossip, and whatnot. A few weeks into her new job, my mom made friends with this woman, Rose. She would come maybe twice a week, and they'd sit around the coffee table on our balcony and just talk. One day, when I was 17, I was at the balcony with them. I'm not sure why I was there, but knowing me, I probably ran out of internet hours. Back in a day, we bought internet monthly per hour in my country, and was bored as fuck. So we're sitting there, they're gossiping about who knows what, and Mom gets up to go get some cake she had baked recently. I remained sitting at the table with Rose, and that's when my life changed forever. Rose was a good-looking woman. She was about 5 feet 6 inches, skinny, long black hair, pearly white teeth. Attractive woman overall. So anyways, I am sitting there with her, and she turns to me. She has this creepy grin on her face. Bright red lipstick with bright white teeth underneath are just making it look more scary. Her head is moving slowly, almost as if she became a puppet. She says something in the lowest tone possible, certainly not loud enough for me to understand. Excuse me? I say, still not being scared, just a bit weirded out. You ready to go now? She said this in a voice of a child, I kid you not. Like maybe an 8-year-old girl. Grin is still there. She mustered those words through her teeth, never opening the jaw. What? I asked, starting to get scared. You ready? The same thing again. Only this time, she pulls out an orange out of her purse. That's it. She just took the orange out and held it there. Didn't offer it, didn't eat it herself, just held the fucking thing. At that point, I was getting scared as fuck. Thankfully, my mom came with the cake. Rose, almost as if someone pushed a button on a remote control, switched back to her normal self, putting the orange back into her purse without my mom noticing. I left the balcony creeped out, but I was 17, so I brushed it off quickly. That night, I had trouble sleeping. My room is on the first floor, and my window is at a maybe 5-foot height, so I kept looking at it praying not to see some scary monster. I would turn in my bed constantly, and look at the window maybe every 5 minutes. It was getting late, and I started to doze off, but decided to look into the window one last time. And there she fucking was, standing in the fucking window. Rose. Just standing, looking directly at me. Moonlight was bright enough for me to see, with the same grin on her face. Lipstick was red as ever, and teeth were whiter than ever. I was paralyzed with fear. I often imagined what I'd do in situations like these, and I always had an escape plan for any hypothetical I threw at myself. But now, when this friend of my mother's was staring at me through my window at 4 a.m., just smiling, I was motionless. My mouth got dry, I got goosebumps, have them now as I type this, and I swear it became freezing in my room, probably just the way the body reacts to shock. I finally gathered the courage to get up. I started walking towards the door. Your head was turning with me, slowly, with the grin still there. Again, it was as if she were a puppet. I wanted to scream for my parents, but knowing how tense they are, I decided not to cause panic just yet. There had to be some rational explanation, right? For fuck knows what reason, I decided to walk to the window and ask her what the fuck her problem was. I made 2 slow steps towards it and froze. I froze because she moved. You know what her movement was? Taking the orange out of her purse. Does anyone know what the record time is for having goosebumps? Because they sure as shit aren't going away. Anyways, after being terrified for a minute, I decide to go on. I am a big guy and figured I'd be able to fight her off if push comes to shove. My windows pull up in order to open. I pull it open maybe some 10 inches and stop. She's not moving, just holding the fucking orange and looking at me with the scariest grin you'll ever see. I stand there. She stands there. Then she starts bending. But every move she makes is so slow, so mechanical. She's bending so she can reach the open part of the window. I'm horrified. She pushes her head through it, just enough space for her head to go through. You go with me now. As she's saying that, in her 8-year-old voice, her hand is making its way through the crack, holding an orange. What do I do? What you do? Fucking run. I run out of my room, screaming for my dad. My dad being a light sleeper, he jumps out of his bed and screams back at me asking what the hell is going on. All I can muster to say is Rose window. While Dad is putting his pants on, I run back to my room, wanting Rose to be there so he can see that I am not crazy. You know how in horror movies the person you saw is gone by the time witnesses come? Yeah, well, similar thing happened, except I caught Rose leaving. There is a house some 100 yards away from mine, and it had one of those motion-activated lights, lots of crime back home. I saw the light turn on, and a glimpse of Rose disappearing behind that house. By the time Dad ran into my room, she was gone. After much talking, he decided that it was just a nightmare and told me to call him only if someone physically comes into my room. You and your fucking imagination, he said, walking away. Needless to say, I got exactly 0 hours of sleep that night. Nothing happened in the next few months. Rose would still come to visit my mom, but I'd make sure I wasn't there. Fuck that. As in every teenager's life, so many things were happening around me, and I forgot about the Rose incident. Then one day, I was spending my afternoon browsing internet, years before Reddit, unfortunately. I got pretty hungry, so as any spoiled child, I yelled from my room to see if my mom would come. She didn't. Oh well, tough luck. I have to go to the kitchen and make myself a sandwich. Kitchen in our house is connected to the living room, but you can't see the living room until you're at least in the middle of the kitchen. So I open the kitchen and walk in. I freeze. There it is, right there on the kitchen table. An orange. Immediate thought of that creepy night. Rose is here. I am still motionless in my spot. Few seconds later, I realize how stupid I am for relating a common piece of fruit to a crazy window stalker. So I walk towards the table, wanting to put the orange back in the fruit cabinet. I grab the thing and hear the voice behind me. "You will have to come with me soon, you know." Child's voice. It's Rose. I produce some kind of noise resembling scared pig about to get slaughtered. Lightning fast, I turn around, and there she is, standing in the middle of the living room. Just standing there, same grin on her face, same lipstick on her lips, teeth white as ever. Only she started tilting her head to the left a bit, in slow motion. I remember it as if it happened yesterday. Her long black hair falling down her shoulders, white summer dress, bright red shoes to match her lipstick. I forgot to mention that she was very pale. Even in the summer, she seemed to not be friends with the sun. This added to creepiness. There's this woman who already scared the shit out of me once, standing alone in the middle of my living room, pale as a ghost, bright red lipstick and shoes, tilting her head to the side, speaking in child's voice. And then, she takes an orange out of her purse. Takes it out slowly, and looks at me, as if she wants me to have it. Just as my self-defense mode is about to take over, and I either run away, or tackle the crazy bitch, my mom walks in. I know it didn't happen, but it seemed like my mom brought the light into the room. I released a breath of relief. Rose, of course, went back to her normal self. They were about to go for a walk, and my mom was getting ready in her room, while she was pulling her grudge shit on me. Since my parents wouldn't believe anything I was saying about her, I wasn't sure what to do. Only thing I could do at that age is nothing, I suppose. But I swore I'd punch that woman should she ever come close to me again. A year or so had passed without any incidents, and I was getting ready to go to the United States to study in college. Since I was going to play basketball there, I had to prepare for it. I spent summer away from home, working out in a training camp in a town about 40 miles from my city. During the last night of the camp, the last incident happened. My roommate had left the camp the day before, and I had the room to myself. I was very excited about going to America in a few days, and had trouble sleeping. My room had a beautiful balcony. I was on the 3rd floor of a hotel. Since it was warm, I decided to sit in the chair on the balcony for a while. I walked out, sat down, and immediately regretted it. It is really time to come now. I nearly shit myself. I mean, it's been a while since I last heard that voice, but something like that stays with you forever. I turned my head to the right, and Rose was standing on the fence of a balcony of the room next to mine. Mind you, not standing on the balcony, or sitting at the table, but standing on the fence. How she was balancing, I don't know. Balcony was at least 50 feet from the ground, and she was holding the orange. Fucking orange. Only this time, orange seemed to have been somewhat rotten, not nearly as bright as the first 3 times. I was scared that she would attempt to jump over to my balcony, as there was only few feet distance between them. I was also scared she'd die in attempt to do so, and I'd be blamed somehow. I had no idea what the fuck was going on. It really is time, you know. She said it in that childlike voice, never opening her jaw, her teeth forever clenched together, and lipstick the color of fresh blood. She seemed even paler this time, and her head was tilted to the left even more. She wore red shoes. What the fuck do you want from me? I screamed in desperation, angry that this woman is causing me so much distress, but also hoping that someone would hear me and come witness this crazy bitch's harassment. I only want you to go where you belong. She said that, and again never opened her teeth. She only sprang her hand more towards me, almost offering me that semi-rotten orange. Fuck you, you crazy bitch. I opened the door of my room, and as I was walking in, I heard, "You will come." I slammed the door, deciding this woman was schizophrenic. I would have probably flipped out more, but I was leaving the continent in few days, at which point I was safe. Wrong. I know I have a wall of fucking text, but this is the shortest version of these creepy events. I came to the US, and have been here for 7 years now. I forgot about the incidents, and went on with my life. Only time I ever thought about Rose was when talking to my mom, who said that since I left, her friendship with the crazy bitch fell apart. I was glad. Last 7 years were the best of my life. I got bachelor's and master's degrees. I got a wonderful girlfriend. You know, life's good, man. But fucking then, I am a big technology geek, and I love Apple. Don't shoot me down for this, please. So, it was last Friday, September 21st, the release of iPhone 5. I am in front of the store with about 50 other people. I am maybe 15th in line. It's raining. It's cold. I've been there for about 4 hours now. Doors finally open. We start moving in slowly. I look across the street and instantly stop. People run into my back, I can hear complaining. But it's all bouncing off of me. Across the street, I see a woman in a white dress, head tilted, holding something orangish. Grin on her face. Lipstick so bright red, I can see it from across the street. I can't move. Someone from far in the back pushes, causing me to fall. While I gather myself, I see the woman disappearing behind the corner. I remain sitting on the ground. It was Rose. It was her, I swear. I sit there for a few minutes, get myself together, and walk in the store. No phones left. I decide to walk across the street. And there it was. At the place where she was standing now only sits a mushed, terribly rotten orange. That's it. Just a rotten orange. I started crying. All memories came back. I thought that my whole life would constitute of being stalked by some maniac. And how did she find me anyways? I spent next few hours in a nearby coffee shop, drinking tea and reasoning how this could be logically possible. I kept no secret from my friends and family about my whereabouts. Did she stalk my Facebook? My friends? Did she travel here to harm me? What the fuck is her deal? Answering no questions I asked myself, I went home, deciding to keep it all to myself. My girlfriend noticed something was wrong with me for the next few days, but didn't push it. I figured it was all a fluke, my mind playing tricks because I was up all night before that morning. Plus, it was raining. How could I see that well? And that orange, well, that was just a coincidence. I convinced myself that I was just making it all up. So today a letter came. I get a lot of mail, so it's not that out of the ordinary. But there was this envelope with no return address. I opened it and was immediately shocked. I was holding a Polaroid picture. In it, there was me, standing in line in front of the store last Friday. Only the picture was taken by a person behind me. It was taken at the moment I was looking across the street. I can tell because I could see the horror on my face. On the back of the photo, there were few words written with a black pen. You come with me now. I dropped the picture and started crying like a baby. Like really crying my ass off. My girlfriend found me in our room, curled up on bed, still crying. She was terrified that maybe someone close to us had died, as she's never seen me let a single tear before. I had to tell her. I started telling her the story, leaving most details out, so I can get to the point quicker. As I was talking, she was getting more and more pale. She never said a word. I finished my story and she was pale as ghost, not moving. Then she asked. She asked a fucking question that honestly caused me to almost faint. She said, "This woman, did she happen to, hold an orange?" I froze. She started crying like I've never seen her cry before. We had a long talk that night, and her story would require another wall of text. Honestly, I am fucking tired from typing this much, and I'm pretty sure nobody will be willing to read this much. I am also lost, terrified, confused. But if someone does read this, I'll write the rest. I'll write in hope that someone can offer a solution, and an answer maybe. Currently, we are both scared as fuck, not knowing what to do next. Police is an option, but what do we tell them? I don't know, man. I am fucking scared for mine and her well-being. Help me. Update. Well guys, shit. Don't know what to tell you. It happened again today. Except I didn't see her. Let me give you a quick rundown of events. 9 a.m. I go to the local police station with my girlfriend. We tell them all that we know and show them the Polaroid. Although quite friendly, they say they really can't do much other than maybe file a restraining order against the person who probably, their words, isn't even in the country. They think I mistook her for someone else, and the picture, well, they said it was probably a prank. They did take the photo and open a file about it, just in case it escalates. It did. 1 p.m. We arrived in town where I saw her. Went to the location, there was nothing there. Don't know what the hell I expected anyways. We stayed there for a while. 6:30 p.m., arriving home. Front door of the house is open, but this is not uncommon as we live with 5 other roommates. We go upstairs to our room. Our room is open. That is unheard of, as we always make sure we lock it. And our landlord is the only other person who has the key. I yell asking if someone is there, no response. Also, no roommates are in the house, it seems. We walk in. We freeze. Our room is decently small, constitutes of 2 queen-size beds put together and a little dresser, and that's about it. So what did we see? Pillows are all on our dresser. Towels on the bed. Our sheet is taken off the bed and put on the floor. It is spread out. In the center of it is an orange cut in 2 halves with a little peel next to it. My laptop is facing the door and is playing the same song on repeat. My laptop was turned off before I left and was also password protected. The song playing is my favorite from childhood. Africa by Toto. My desktop background was changed to one picture from my childhood that I didn't even have in the computer. 7 p.m. We call the police. They arrive 15 minutes later. I take about 5 pics of the mess just before they come. They say they'll start an investigation, but claim that it's still not serious enough for fingerprints and stuff. 8:30 p.m. They leave and tell us to call should anything happen again, and also advise us to stay with friends if possible. We spent next few hours just talking, man, trying to figure it out. We're exhausted both mentally and physically. I'm going to Skype with my mom tomorrow and see if she knows anything. I will type up my GF story tonight, but may post it in the morning if I don't finish it all in time. I will include photos I took, I promise you that much. Holy fuck, this shit is happening to me. For the second part, please click here. She saw something we didn't. Mary's room, also known as the knowledge argument, is a philosophical concept concerning a hypothetical woman named Mary who has never seen color. She has only ever existed in a black and white room. Mary studies the world through books and a monochromatic television screen. She reads about colors, but she does not experience them visually. Can the universe be fully understood in purely physical terms? The answer differs depending on whether one believes that we know fundamental truths about reality a priori, without experience, or a posteriori, with experience. In other words, will Mary learn anything about color when she leaves the black and white room? It was a thought experiment. Nobody was supposed to actually do it. However, in 2007, a group of researchers sought to answer that question, and the experiment they conducted would have been condemned by boards of ethics across the globe. But these were not ethical scientists, and this was no ethical organization. I would have decried its actions back then. This wasn't why I joined the agency, but I was afraid. After all, they were willing to put an innocent baby in a colorless prison cell, doomed to grow up in near solitary confinement, save for a nurse-dubbed nanny. What would they have done to a whistleblower? I don't know how they found the baby, and I don't want to know. Whether a parent willingly gave her up, or one of the scientists intentionally bred her for the experiment, the result remains the same. A baby, named Mary, in honor of the philosophical concept which inspired the horrifying experiment, was placed in a white, windowless, foam-padded cell. She was blindfolded whenever her nurse entered the room to provide food, formula, and fresh clothes. Always the same black onesie, with coverings like mittens and socks to cover her hands and feet. She was also made to wear a facial covering, akin to a balaclava, which covered her face. There was no mouth slit, to avoid her seeing the color of her lips, and she wore black contacts in her eyes. Equally, Nanny wore the exact same attire every time she entered the room. To put it simply, Mary's daily outfit was horrid, barely any more humane than a straitjacket and a bag over the head. There was no room for error. Mary was watched by at least one person at all hours of day and night. Should she get curious and try to sneak a peek at the color of her skin or eyes, she would receive 100 volts in the collar attached to her neck. But more terrifyingly than that was the simple fact that Mary was well trained. So well trained that she never, in her 18 years of imprisonment, even attempted to take a peek at her skin. She was such a willing prisoner, having never known anything else, that I think she would have stayed in her room even if the door had been standing ajar. This initially seemed excessive, given that copious measures had been taken to ensure no reflective surfaces would be allowed within the room. Even the television monitor was fitted with an anti-glare screen. However, scientists were paranoid that Mary might, somehow, catch a glimpse of her green eyes. Even seeing her pale, peach-colored skin would have dirted the results of the experiment. Black and white, those were the only shades that Mary was permitted to see. And when Mary started walking and talking, Nanny stopped entering the room entirely. Fresh food and clothes were delivered through a horizontal slit in the steel door, and Mary was always instructed to wear a blindfold before changing or using the bathroom, which comprised of a white porcelain toilet and a black showerhead fixed to the foam wall. Revoltingly, both were exposed in that titchy room of hers. Her entire world was a box, stretching a mere 4 meters across all 3 dimensions. I wanted to save her numerous times over the years, wanted to leave that horrid place behind. But I'm a coward. Besides, we wouldn't have got far. There is no running from these people. And the agency isn't even the greatest horror of this story. On Mary's 18th birthday, Dr. Robson delivered a thrilling message over the speaker. "Happy birthday, Mary," he said in a monotone lacking empathy. "Thank you," the girl meekly responded. "Will there be chocolate cake this year?" I wasn't fond of the lemon last year, you see. Today we'll be celebrating in a different way, Mary, Robson replied. Do you know your age? I'm 18, she croaked. Does that mean? Yes, Mary, Dr. Robson said. Today you leave the room. I'll see color? She asked rather innocently. Any sane and well-developed human in the outside world would have simply been glad to have freedom. But Mary had no concept of freedom. No concept of a prison. She had no understanding that this childhood had been abnormal. Worse than abnormal. Inhuman. To keep Mary compliant, her schooling had been rigid, with books that purposefully omitted any dangerous ideas. The result of that? A girl relishing at the opportunity to not escape from her prison, but to simply see color. Yes, Mary, you will see color. Nanny is already on her way to fetch you, Dr. Robson said. We watched live footage, filmed on a closed-circuit camera from our operational room. Nanny unlocked the weighty entrance to Mary's room, and we all waited with bated breath. Waited as Nanny aided Mary in removing her black headgear. I heard Mary giggling giddily and unnervingly, as the bag was removed from her head and the contacts were removed from her eyes. And then, as her first experience with a color other than black or white, Nanny removed her own black outfit to revealing a striking red dress beneath. Mary gasped. It was an intake of breath so sharp that she seemed to stop breathing. Perhaps, for a moment, she had stopped breathing. What are you experiencing? Dr. Robson asked. Is it new? Does it feel like? I knew it, Mary whispered, with vocal cords that sounded as if they were on the verge of snapping. Then her giggling picked up again, seeming to unnerve Nanny. This is why you did the experiment, isn't it? Does this feel like a new experience, Mary? Robson asked with a hint of impatience, seemingly oblivious to Nanny's discomfort. It was plainly clear to me, even through grainy camera footage. Mary shot her teary face up to the camera. Yes, but I've been waiting for it. Yes, I know that, Mary, Robson groaned. But so have I. Tell me about it. Tell me about the red. How does it feel to experience true color for the first time? We're seeing some interesting brain activity on the screen here, but your words would really help us to. I'm not talking about the red, Mary interjected, and then she jabbed an accusatory finger at Nanny's dress in a way that frightened me. Certainly frightened Nanny, who jumped backwards. I'm talking about that, she giggled. I knew there was something you were leaving out of the books and TV shows over the years. What are you saying, Mary? Robson asked. I don't understand. Red. You're looking at red. Red in the second color, she insisted. The color you didn't describe in the books. None of the adjectives you've used describe this one. Red is just as stark, powerful, and passionate as described. The blue color of Nanny's eyes is as soothing and tender as described. But this other color on her dress is just... What other color? Robson cried. It's just red, Mary. Right here. Mary yelled as she lunged forwards and prodded Nanny in the abdomen. The woman in the red dress jumped backwards, clutching her stomach, and then Mary's eyes went wide. Oh, she whimpered. What, Mary? Robson asked. Please tell us what you're seeing. What I saw, she whispered, moving her finger up to Nanny's face. It moved up there, and now it's gone. Please describe this other color to us, Mary, Robson said, before putting an image up on Mary's television set. Which one of those is it? Mary's eyes shot to the television screen and quickly scanned the 12 main colors on the screen. It's not one of those. Not a different shade of one of those. It's a different color. There are 10 million possible permutations of colors, Mary, Robson said. Perhaps you just... No, Dr. Robson, the girl interrupted, panting heavily as her eyes darted back to Nanny's face, studying it. I understand how shades work. The shade of blue on the screen differs from the color of Nanny's eyes. But that other color, it wasn't included on the screen. It was. Mary stopped, and her eyes widened. Then she said, I'm sorry. Nanny frowned. That's okay, Mary. I know you didn't mean to. Not you, Mary hissed, before leaning forwards and trying to look into Nanny's mouth. I'm sorry I saw you. Mary, you're not making any sense, Dr. Robson said. I think we've done enough for today. We'll do more tomorrow, so... I wasn't supposed to see it, Mary moaned, shooting backwards, clunking into the foam wall, then seizing clumps of her straggly hair. Oh God, why don't you see it? It's... Nanny, it's in you. Nanny looked up at the camera. I'd like to step outside now, Dr. Robson. Dr. Robson sighed, then pinched the bridge of his nose between two fingers. Fine, Nanny. Nanny had already spun on her heel to leave. She would have done so regardless of whether Robson gave her permission, as Mary was clearly disturbing her. but she barely took one step before her body fixed itself to the floor. And then Nanny juddered like a fleshy bobblehead. I was overcome by a warm sensation across my skin, and moments later, there came a thunderous noise. Skin flew into the walls from a red eruption of dress fragments, blood, and guts. Nanny had spontaneously exploded. Screams filled the operating room. Some fled, some fainted, and others simply froze. I don't even know whether any of them noticed it. Noticed Mary clawing out her eyes, leaving streaks of blood and tears across her cheeks as, mere minutes after seeing color for the first time, she ensured that she would never see anything else ever again. "I'm sorry," the eyeless woman wailed. "I didn't know I wasn't allowed. Please, I'll never see you again." As I saw a trail of blood run from Nanny's destructed corpse towards the front door, clearly painted by something unseen, a deep dread filled my chest. I realized that my fleeing colleagues had the right idea, so I followed, fled in fear, leaving Dr. Robson and my frozen coworkers behind. I don't remember leaving the building, getting in my car, and going home. But I must have done those things. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. Wouldn't be posting this for all of you. It's been 4 hours. 4 hours since Mary saw color for the first time. Saw a color that none of us saw. What was it? Why could only Mary see it?